the message that he has learned from his spiritual preceptors and mentors. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna, I was informed the typical sequence that we follow is the prayers to the acharyas, and then we get into the Bhagavad Gita and its chapters. So I'm just going to start with the prayers and then we will discuss. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Sva Padantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Harijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhavitamscha Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheshaha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratvishe Namaha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaurava Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yatkripatamaham vande Shri Guru Dinatarino. I'm very grateful to be with all of you today, and my sincerest gratitude to His Grace Ramachandra Prabhu, Her Grace Madhavi Sita Mataji, and His Grace Ram Tulsi Prabhu for this wonderful service opportunity. So we welcome you all today for this auspicious discussion of the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Today also happens to be the Sarva Pitru Amavasya, and so our prayers at the lotus feet of Shri Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, that may all the Pitras be satisfied. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam says that the best way to pacify all the Pitras for several generations is to glorify the Supreme Lord and offer the glories and the remnants of prasadam of Lord Vishnu to them. And so may this evening that all of you chose to be here and consciously dedicate to hearing about the Bhagavad Gita be an instrument towards that. So this is actually one of the most beautiful pastimes that occurs in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya, the Sri Vaishnava stories. And so once upon a time, at the inception or very close to when Kali Yuga first began, there was a very devotional family, a very devotional Sri Vaishnava family, who were actually in the lineage of the worshippers of Lord Balaji. And so generations after generations, they had worshipped the Supreme Lord in his most beautiful form of Lord Venkateshwara. And once they had a son, so this particular story revolves around that son. And just like every parent likes to name their son something spiritual, they realized that this son had a lot of spiritual inclinations. He was also a bit naughty. So they named him Abhay. No, actually, I said naughty. So they actually named him Madhav. So just like every parent likes to name their kid something spiritual so that they can remember the Supreme Lord, parents were very attracted to the specific form of the Lord, who is described as Madhava. And so therefore, from that day onwards, he came to be known as Madhav Brahman. Right from a very small ripe age of 5, he was known as Madhav Brahman. And Madhav Brahman was extremely diligent, disciplined, well-behaved, and he would not take one step outside the instructions of his parents, who also happened to be Sri Vaishnavas. And therefore, when Madhav Brahman was following their instructions, he was actually acting in the bona fide sampradaya. He was acting in parampara. And one of the important services that was entrusted to Madhav was to go out and get fragrant flowers for the worship of Lord Balaji. And for how many of you have been to Tirumala or Tirupati here? If you can raise your hands. Oh, several of you. So you know how beautiful and lush green the whole arena is. There are several hills, 7 primary hills, known as the Tirumala hills. And the Lord has done several pastimes in this kshetra. And so this is a very, very spiritual place to be in. And Madhav Brahman, along with his family, was living in the middle of these Tirumala hills. So they were very fortunate. And so every morning Madhav Brahman would go at the crack of the dawn and he would collect some fragrant flowers. He would bring them back and he would hand them over to his father and his grandfather. And then the two of them would wear their uttaris and dhotis and all the required dresses that the Sri Vaishnavas wear. And they would go into the temple and they would offer these flowers to the Lord. Now, as years passed by, Madhav Brahman became young. He was also married to a very kind and a chaste Brahmani who was also of a very high character and extremely qualified in terms of the several qualities that she exhibited, whether as a daughter-in-law or as a wife, or later on in a few years he also became a father, and so as a mother. The family was doing extremely well in the service of the Supreme Lord. Until one day. And so every movie or sort of situation always has that until one kind of situation where something happens and then unfortunately there's a climax or whatever. And so until one day when Madhav Brahman was still young, and he was sent by his father to, as usual, pluck flowers for the Supreme Lord. And we have to understand that this is Tirumala, this is the beginning of Kali Yuga still. So this is still very lush, green, very beautiful. If we read some of the descriptions from Srimad Bhagavatam about the places where the demigods go for their picnics, you'll see crystal clear waters, fragrant lotuses, white swans, and the ambience and the environment is so peaceful and tranquil that it is impossible not to remember the Supreme Lord in such an environment. It is an environment that is suited for penance. It is an environment that's suited for austerities. And right in the middle of this, Madhav Brahman is going to the gardens. He's plucking one flower at a time. And he happens to come across something that's moving in the bushes. So his first reaction is it might be an animal, because Tirumala even now can get quite wild. If you've been there, you would know that there's several wild animals on the hills. There's also several herbivores, carnivores equally. But it's basically hills, so we can't expect anything different. And so his first reaction was it might be an animal. So he sort of tried to run away from it, but then curiosity got the better of him. And he was like, I just cannot go back without knowing what this is. And so he hid behind the bushes in an attempt to know what's going on, who is moving these bushes, and really who's behind this, what's happening here. That's when he realized, and there was a young woman, an Adivasi woman, who was hunting. She was hunting boars. She was hunting boars so she can take them for their family meal. And as soon as Madhav Brahman saw her, the arrows of Cupid pierced in his heart. And while his initial thought, and so it's very interesting because anytime something like this happens, someone who has diligently practiced their whole life, the very first thing that happens is the Paramatma from within will give a very strong signal. And so the Paramatma gave him a very clear signal: back out and run away from here. This is your last chance. And Madhav Brahman was obviously in a dilemma. He's a Brahman. He's very dutiful to his family and very dutiful to the Supreme Lord. And he knows that this voice is the voice of Lord Venkateshwara himself. And it's coming from a place of care. But it was in this moment that he chose to do something different. He thought to himself, I've listened to you, my dear Lord, my whole life. This whole life has been a sacrifice to you. I've never done anything outside the orders of my spiritual preceptors. I've never acted outside the word of the scriptures. I've been extremely chaste. I've basically done everything that is dharmic. But there is one thing that I haven't had experience with. And that is, I haven't had experience doing something which is outside of your words. And It's very interesting. 21 years of diligent service and one moment of the heart getting pierced. And it was in this moment, as the Paramatma had indicated to him, back out, this is your last chance, Madhav decided to indulge. And so he went up to this lady and he started introducing himself. I'm Madhav, I'm the son of so-and-so Pandita. Our family worships the Lord. Who are you, oh beautiful? And now this woman, her name was Kuntala, she said, and Kuntala means, so basically Vaikuntha is without anxiety, because Kuntha means anxiety. And so Kuntala means anxiety. And so this woman told him, hey, my name is Kuntala, Madhav, great to meet you, by the way. But she said, based on the descriptions that you have told me, there is nothing similar between the two of us. Therefore, she said, I recommend you to turn back now and continue with your tasks. This was Madhav's second warning. The first warning came from Paramatma. The second warning came from Kuntala herself. And Madhav said, no, I'm just genuinely attracted to you. And he said to her, this is divine love. This has nothing to do with anything else. So he said, I would like to know more about you. And then she said, my family is a family of Adivasis. We live in the forest. We hunt in the forest. My father is the chieftain of all the Adivasis that stay here. And I'm his princess. And Madhav immediately said, I really would love to meet your father. And after some dialogue and some real good hesitation, Kuntala finally took him to her father. And that this is the third time. The father now is meeting Madhav Brahman. And the father was like, you come from a very different lineage. Your family is the worshipper of Lord, the Supreme Lord, Purushottam. Your family is used to sitting with him, putting him to rest, swinging him, offering garlands to him, accepting his remnants as sacred prasad, putting the chandan of his lotus feet on your forehead. He said, we are used to hunting boars. We are used to killing men. We are used to indulging openly in different relationships. We are used to indulging in intoxication. We regularly gamble. We do not have any restrictions. Therefore, he said, my strongest recommendation to you, dear child, would be that you turn back and go away. And Madhav at this point was so frustrated. He's like, anyone I'm talking to is just telling me to go back. And therefore he said, I'm definitely resolute. I'm not going back this time. Has anyone of us been in that situation where several people tell us not to do something? We don't have to raise hands, but several people tell us not to do something, and then we are like, I'm definitely doing this now because it's too much. No one understands me. My problem is unique. No one has gone through this before. And so therefore all their advice is theoretical. And so I'm not going to listen to that. The chieftain said, the only way I'll let you be with my daughter is if you marry her. Which would then mean you have to renounce your existing family. A few weeks later, Madhav came back, decided to further engage. He got married to Kuntala. When he came back, he basically moved his parents and his wife and children out of his house. And Kuntala and him started living together. And life went on for a few years. He had kids, he started hunting, he started eating meat, he started indulging in intoxication, and he started having open relationships with anyone. Several years went by, and unfortunately he was contracted by leprosy. And as soon as his diagnosis on leprosy came back, the very first person to renounce him was Kuntala. She was like, you are now a disgrace to our community. And by the way, this is a real pastime that Comes in the Sri Vaishnava Samvad. So she renounced him. She kicked him out of his own house. And in American language now, he was homeless. So he came on the streets, not knowing what to do. And he was sitting amidst the beggars on the street. And if he would get something like a small loaf of bread in the day, he would consider his day heavily accomplished and highly fortunate. It came to such a point that in a few months' time, he just couldn't take it anymore. And he came to a conclusion that now there's only one thing that I can do, which is to end this body and be free from the sufferings that have come with it. And just as he was about to do that, he saw something which was about to change his entire life's trajectory once more. What did he see? What was that? He was about to suicide, and then he saw something which was going to bring his life back. What's that? His son. His son. That's a good guess. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other guesses? What did he see that would change his life for good, forever? Any other guesses? The Lord? The Lord himself. Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Any other guesses? He saw his son, the Lord. Any other guesses?
Flowers that he was
the flowers. The flowers that he used to carry for the Lord. The fragrance of the flowers. Maybe that's nostalgic. We will find out at the end of this discussion what he saw. But right now we will get into the details of the chapter. So we all stay excited before Prasad. Otherwise, it's always Mahaprasadi Govind. But trust me, it's a very exciting story. You would all want to stay back until the end. Anyway, so coming to the 16th chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita, I think it's compared to an analogy of a dog. The dog is known as a pet that's highly caring, supportive, protective of its owners. At the same time, the dog's behavior can also be unpredictable at certain times. And so the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when it's metamorphically explained in terms of acronyms, it has three critical components to it. The first part is the first 6 verses, which detail the qualities of the divine and the qualities of the demoniac. The second portion, which is the largest portion, and I'll come to why it is the largest portion. The largest portion talks about what's the perspective of someone with demoniac qualities about this world, about devotional service, about spiritual life, and about everyone in general. And then the third section, a short but a very impactful and important section, talks about the 3 gates to hell, which should be avoided at all costs. And the reason we discussed Madhav Brahman's story, as we go through the discussion, you'll be able to draw some parallels. And we will come towards the end why we specifically chose to discuss that story. But it has a very deep connection with the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And so, diving deep into the first 3 verses, the Supreme Personality of Godhead here enlists the 26 divine qualities of someone that exhibits such a behavior. So, I'll just read out the translation in interest of time. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from passion for honor. These transcendental qualities of son of Bharata belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. And so the Supreme Personality of Godhead is starting by explaining the 26 good qualities. And the Lord is conscious of the fact that explaining the good qualities first is in the interest of the conditioned soul. He wants to focus a lot more on systematically exposing the demoniac qualities that come in the subsequent chapters. And why is that? So is the Lord sadistic for doing that? It's not really that he takes pleasure in exposing someone's demoniac qualities. The whole goal of the Supreme Lord by doing this exercise is how can a soul understand themselves better, and how can they come back to Godhead, back to me, back to the Supreme Lord. And I think with that, and according to the scriptures, it is with this compassion and understanding that the Supreme Lord first lists the 26 divine qualities, and then he goes into the demoniac qualities. And as we see the practical implementation of the divine qualities, we will see that there are 4 varnas, there are 4 ashramas. Typically speaking, in the Vedic times, for example, people would live up to 100 years. The first 25 years would go into student life, or what they would call as brahmachari life, where the boys would go into the school in Gurukula, and the girls would learn under the shelter of their mother. The next 25 years would go in the grihastha ashram, where the man and woman would have, basically they would practice Krishna consciousness together. They would procreate for generating Krishna conscious children, and they would also practice austerity while dealing with each other. The third ashram, which was after that, would be Vanaprastha ashram. In Vanaprastha ashram, the person technically still lives with their spouse, but then they're supposed to take one step further in their advancement. They're supposed to go further deep into their study of the scriptures and into their sangha, into their seva. They're supposed to develop that spiritual muscle of practicing more deeply, because in grihastha life, as all of us, especially once with kids, we know how our practice of sadhana is. We know how the 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra happen. Mangal Arati happens while bathing one of the kids. Tulsi Arati happens while feeding the second kid. That's grihastha ashram. It's navigating through the chaos, but then that chaos also purifies us. But then once we reach a certain stage where the kids grow out of their initial 20-25 years, then the husband and wife are supposed to take into the third ashram, which is the Vanaprastha ashram. And the objective of Vanaprastha ashram is to further detach the couple from the worldly activities, from family activities, and then get them into an influx of spiritual activities. They're supposed to dedicate more time towards the worship of the Supreme Lord. And then, of course, for those few who are fortunate enough to take the sannyas ashram, there are a list of qualities that are listed for them. And of course, we have a picture of our founder Acharya here, who has demonstrated through his illustrious example how no matter where a person might be geographically, in heart and spirit, it is extremely possible to practice purity and therefore, practice Krishna consciousness. And through his example, he has also created a house where everyone can find a place. And so that's basically the 26 qualities and how they manifest in the specific ashrams. After that, the Lord goes into 6 major demoniac qualities, because the Lord also, while conversing with Arjuna, he's also acknowledging the fact that there are a lot more demoniac qualities to explore. But at a high level, the Lord also wants to give some sort of a summary or sort of like an executive summary, saying that, hey, by the way, there's, tons of demoniac qualities, but of them, these 6 are the most difficult to overcome. And if we were to summarize those demoniac qualities into key themes, then these would be the key themes. And so the Lord says, Dambho Darpo Abhimanascha. This is actually one of the most important verses of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. The Lord says, pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Pritha. And right after this verse, the Lord actually acknowledges that Arjuna, you are not actually demoniac. You are divine because you are my friend. You are very dear to me. But he says, I'm sharing these qualities with you so that you are aware that you are not demoniac. And then, of course, from our acharyas, we learn that he is also sharing these qualities so all of us can learn. And so this is a very famous image that we are all, most of us are used to seeing when we discuss spiritual topics. And so essentially, the kind of qualities that we choose to build or develop will ultimately decide our destination. And so the more we succumb to qualities that are one of these, the six: pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance, we are essentially going through the rabbit hole of the hellish planets and lower forms of life. Whereas if we consciously work hard and decide to invest more in the divine qualities, then we are actively working towards going back home, back to Godhead. And so it's very interesting because there's two things that are very important in this entire situation. Everyone has two things that they have to go through. One is their nature and one is their nurture. And so right at this moment, if all of you were to reflect deeply, all of us have a certain nature. That nature comes through a combination of parameters such as past experiences, the kind of company we keep, the kind of food we eat, the kind of thoughts we entertain, the kind of exposure we give to our senses, to different objects of sense gratification. All these things collectively culminate to form our nature. And so at this very moment, if you were to decide that this is my nature and I immediately want to change this nature, that's not possible because that's deeply rooted. So what the Lord is suggesting here is that there is a path out of it. There is a gradual path out of it, the path through nurture. And nurture has to do with a person's free will. Nurture has to do with one's own endeavor. It has to do with one's own choices. And so right here we will see that nurturing can happen at any stage of spiritual advancement. Like for example, right here we see Narad Muni was going through the forest and he saw this person, his name was Valya. And so Valya would steal people who were passing through the forest and then he would kill them. He would rob them and then he would kill them. And he was so used to this fact that it had become almost like an unconscious habit for him. He sees a living being. It's almost like if some of you have known, there are certain animals in the animal kingdom that are apex predators. And as soon as they see something moving, their first instinct is just kill this creature and eat them, especially creatures like polar bears and others. And so Valya was so deep into his conditionings that anytime he would see anyone passing through the forest, his first instinct would be rob this person and then kill this person. And when Narad Muni saw that, he felt very compassionate for this person. He said, you are actually living a very miserable life because the afterlife of doing all of these things is going to be very harsh. And so out of compassion, Narad Muni gave him a mantra. He said, you just chant Mara, Mara, Mara and just keep chanting that. Mara basically means die. But if you keep cyclically chanting that, then it eventually becomes Ram, 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 Ram. And then that's how, by the association of Narad Muni, Valya took it seriously. He chanted Ram Nam, and then ultimately he becomes Maharishi Valmiki, who is the compiler of the Ramayana. He's the Shiksha Guru of Lord Ramachandra himself. And so that's the power of nurture. In the second situation we see, so Valya was in the mode of ignorance, someone will say. Someone might say that, Prabhuji, we are already in a mode of goodness. We are already sufficiently advanced. There is no need for us to nurture. So then the scriptures give us another example. When Srila Vyasadeva compiled the Vedas, he was still very unsatisfied. And so he reached out to his spiritual master, Narad Muni, and he said, why am I unsatisfied? And then Narad Muni instructs him, because you have not sufficiently done what is your nature. Your nature is to glorify the Supreme Lord. The Vedas do not sufficiently glorify the Supreme Lord. So now you nurture your nature and you write Srimad Bhagavatam. And so that's when Srila Vyasadeva takes to compiling the Srimad Bhagavad Katha. And then he gets his ultimate happiness. So someone of the stature of Srila Vyasadeva, who is like a Shaktyavish avatar, literally a literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord, also can act upon nurture. What to talk of ordinary conditioned souls who are struggling in their day-to-day lives of dealing with other people and situations and problems and challenges. So nurture can happen at any level of spiritual advancement. The key difference in the previous ages, we used to see that the demons and the demigods were very distinct. Like, how many of you have seen the Mahavatar Narasimha movie that came out recently? I think most of you, it's been a... Okay, actually, some of you haven't seen it, so I highly recommend it. If you'll see in that movie, they have shown very clearly the distinction between the demigods and the demons, to the point that when Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu visit the king of earth, and they ask him to convert to the demoniac clan, he's so fixated in his divine qualities that he gives up his life, but he does not budge from his qualities. But unfortunately, nowadays, we will see that as the age of Kali Yuga is progressing, the divine and the demoniac, the boundaries between them has faded. And almost in the same person, you will see both. And the material world also kind of fosters that. How does the material world promote one to foster demoniac qualities more? So there is a very key purport in which Srila Prabhupada mentions the material world as a casino of temporary pleasures. For those of you who have seen casinos, especially when we go for Atlantic City Rath Yatra, sometimes we just kind of pass through out of curiosity. So if you ever go into a casino, it's a very interesting situation. First of all, casinos are made in a way that there are no vacant seats for people to sit in. Like, no one can just go there and be like, hey, I'm just waiting for a friend and I'm just sitting on the sidelines. The only seats you will see there are the ones in front of screens or the ones on the gambling tables. And there is a constant sound of coins falling, currency notes being measured. And there's mixed emotions you see, but the whole ambience is created in such a way that as soon as a person enters into a casino, the very first thing they think to themselves is, if I don't give it a try, I'm such a fool. I have to give it a try. Whether I have $5, $50, $500, I should definitely take a chance. Because that's how the casino is designed. It's not designed to make you feel like you're doing something wrong. It's designed to feel like, oh, it's completely normal. Just have a seat and indulge. We have drinks, we have food, we have everything. We have like-minded people who are also greedy. So please go ahead. So this world is compared to a casino of temporary pleasures, primarily for that reason. Because the way this world is created, when we read about the divine and the demoniac qualities, the demoniac qualities feel more natural in today's world than the divine qualities. Like the divine qualities, non-violence, truthfulness, cleanliness, people will say, like especially people who are not inclined to doing that. Sometimes when we talk and encourage people to take to purer lifestyles, it's really hard for them to accept that. Because the material world has constantly, time and again, forced them to think that this is the right way to do things. And so that's where the 13th through 15th, another really important verses in this chapter that says, a demoniac person thinks to himself, so much wealth do I have today, and I will gain more according to my schemes. So much is mine now, and it will only increase in the future, more and more. He is my enemy, and I have killed him, and my other enemies will also be killed. I am the Lord of everything. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. I am the richest man surrounded by aristocratic relatives. There is none so powerful and happy as I am. I shall perform sacrifices. I shall give some charity, and thus I shall rejoice. In such a way, such persons are deluded by ignorance. Now just think about it, for the people who watched that movie. Hiranyakashipu was probably the only person who felt like this to the fullest back in those times. But now compare it to today's times. Almost every person works towards feeling like this. Directly or indirectly, we are put in situations where we are made to believe that the more artha someone has, the more property someone has, the more influence over other beings someone has, whether it's through social media or direct influence or influence through wealth or influence through religion or whatever, we are made to believe that this is natural way of life. And that is exactly the reason why this world is compared to a casino. And then we go into the 3 gates of hell. This is quite an interesting section, mainly because the Lord is suggesting here that these 3 things should be avoided at all costs. Because indulging in any of these 3 things is nothing but a slippery slope. And it's really hard to get out of it. So the Lord here, in his verses, and of course translated as it says, there are 3 gates leading to this hell: lust, anger, and greed. Every sane man should give these up, for they lead to the degradation of the soul. And mind you, it's not like we avoid this once and then we are good for. It's not like we walk in a Costco store, we get a membership, and then for 1 year we are good. We can just go anytime, shop anything. It's not really like that. We have to, day in and day out, consciously work towards avoiding these. It's not a one and done philosophy, unfortunately. It's like for some of us, coming from an Indian background, who are enthusiastic about the sports of cricket, we understand the importance of every inning that it plays towards the final victory. And so in Krishna consciousness, every moment is sort of like that inning. Every moment either compounds us towards, like we saw that ladder that was going to the Lord. Every milestone will either compound us towards taking us to the Supreme Lord, or it will degrade us further down towards going to the hellish planets. And so the 3 examples we are seeing here, and in the interest of time, we won't go into a lot of detail, but we see that in the case of Ajamil, which actually sounds very similar to the pastime of the Madhav Brahman that we are discussing at the start of the discussion, fell to lust, unfortunately, but by the mercy of the Lord's holy name and really just calling out his son, he got the benefit of having a one-on-one audience with the Vishnu Dutas, which changed his life. By the way, that's not the answer for Madhav Brahman if you're guessing that. The second one was the anger aspect, where we see that Durvasa Muni became so furious and angry with Ambrish Maharaj that how can you honor Charanamrita without me coming back from my bath? That he created a fierce demon. And so each of these situations you will see, in Ajamil's case, his Kuntala was the prostitute that he saw. In Durvas Muni's state, his Kuntala was his anger arising from the fact that how can Ambrish Maharaj break the fast before me? And the same with King Vena here. King Vena's example is cited in terms of greed, the 3rd gate to hell. King Vena was so greedy that he wanted all the fruits of all the oblations offered to the fire sacrifices to himself. So he made a mandate to the Brahmanas that from now onwards, stop offering everything to the Supreme Lord. Offer everything to your king, which is King Vena. And of course, ultimately we know how the Brahmanas got very upset with him. And just with the pronunciation of a syllable, they killed him. And then Maharaj Prithu appeared, and then after that, rest is history. But Vena's Kuntala was his greed. He wanted to usurp everything in his kingdom, leave nothing for anyone else. Now think about this. What if all 3 of these, lust, greed, anger, come together in the form of a provoking situation? What is someone supposed to do? And that is also illustrated in our scriptures through a very wonderful example, the example of ultimate surrender. The example of Draupadi, where Duryodhan and Dushasan's lust, anger, greed, everything culminated in disrobing Draupadi. And Draupadi knew that now she has to do something about it. So she initially starts by, trying to protect herself. She calls her husbands. No one is able to help. She calls Bhishma Pitama. She calls Dronacharya. She says, all of you men who claim to be spiritual gurus and teachers are useless if you cannot protect a helpless woman from being disrobed. And then finally she realizes that there is a lesson the Lord is planning to teach here. And that lesson is the lesson of ultimate surrender. Because when provoking situations come, it is only the Lord's holy name and His mercy that can protect a conditioned soul. And that's where she raises both of her hands and she loudly cries out, "Hey Govind!" And that's where the Lord immediately incarnates in the form of a sari. The Lord has taken millions of incarnations, sometimes as a boar, sometimes as a lion, sometimes as a turtle. This time he is incarnated as a sari to protect his beloved devotee Draupadi, which goes to show us what we are supposed to do to protect ourselves. And so the last verse of chapter 16 actually lists down that formula. The last verse says, one should therefore understand what is duty and what is not duty by regulations of the scriptures. Knowing such rules and regulations, one should act so that he may be gradually elevated. And so there are two things that are important here. One is regulation and the other is realization. By regulating our senses, we will move towards self-realization. In the 6th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Lord actually shares a verse which basically imbibes the spirit of this last verse of the 16th chapter. Yukta hara viharasya, yukta cheshtasya karmasu, yukta swapnama bodhasya yogo hi bhavatukkaha. One who is regulated in his habits of eating, sleeping, recreation and work can mitigate all material pains by practicing the yoga system. And how does one regulate that? So just like it is said here, one has to understand what is duty and what is not duty. So in the case of Madhav Brahman, when he came in touch with Kuntala and he got confused, what should he have done in a different way that might have led to a better outcome? Any guesses? What should he have done? What was his duty? What should he have done? If he was confused and he was anxious, what are some of the things that he could do? Yes, bro. He should have asked somebody. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's actually the right answer. He should have asked and by the way, that's not what happens. He should have asked his father or grandfather, who are the pujaris of Lord Venkateshwara, that, oh dear father, I am submerged by attraction for this woman outside of my marriage. What should I do? Please instruct me. Please help me come out of this situation. That was his duty. He did not do that. And so the Acharyas explain there are 4 simple ways of staying very faithful and not going away from the path. This formula is ABCD formula. A stands for association, regularly associating with like-minded devotees, just like all of you are doing right now. B stands for books, reading Srila Prabhupada books and the devotional scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, sincerely and attentively chanting the holy names and honoring sanctified prasadam helps us stay on the track. By doing these things, the more we sweat in peace, we will bleed less in war. But please know one thing, even by doing these things, provoking situations will come. Each and every one of us will face our Kuntala. For some, it is a toxic boss. For some, it is poor grades. For some, it is non-cooperating relatives. For some, it is legal disputes. For some, it is health issues. For some, it is ailing parents. Everyone's Kuntala is different. We all know what our Kuntalas are. Everyone's is different, but we know for ourselves what our Kuntala is. And in that moment, whether we take shelter of the Supreme Lord and grow deeper and raise higher, or we succumb to our Kuntalas and give up to degradation, is our choice. And so essentially, what ended up happening with our dear Madhav Brahman was, as he was sitting in the line of the beggars, pus and ooze and blood coming out of his body, he saw that in a slight distance, not very far from him, there was a group of Shri Vaishnavas that were going, and they were loudly chanting, Bhaja Govinda Govinda Gopala, Bhaja Govinda Govinda Gopala, Bhaja Govinda Govinda Gopala, Bhaja Govinda Govinda Gopala, Venkataramana Govinda, Srinivasa Govinda, Govinda, Srinivasa Govinda, Bhaja Govinda Govinda Gopala, Govinda Govinda soon as he heard those mantras, there was an instant arousal of genuine spiritual sentiments in his heart, and he enthusiastically closed his eyes and cried out to the Supreme Lord with his whole heart and tears flowing from his eyes. He said, Arinanda Tanuja Kinkaram Patitamam Vishame Bhavam Budhau Kripaya Tava Pada Pankaja Sthita Meduli Sadrusham Vichintaya. O dear Lord, the son of Maharaj Nanda, what a miserable destiny and fate I have brought upon myself. Please pick me up from this situation and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. And the Shri Acharyas confirm that when he prayed this, the Supreme Lord sitting with his divine consort, Mother Mahalakshmi, immediately said, he remembered, the Supreme Lord remembered the 21 years of hard work and service his dear devotee had put in. He immediately said, Tatha Astu. And all the leprosy of Madhav Brahman was gone. He came back. He moved back with his parents, his first wife and kids. And eventually at the end of his life, it is confirmed in the scriptures that a very divinely plane descended from the spiritual planet and took him back to Godhead, to Vaikuntha Dham, Tad Dhamam Paramam Mama, a place from where he would now never come back. And so therefore, let us all also hope and sincerely pray that when we come across our anxieties, our kuntalas in this life, we do not give up. It's hard. It's a hard hustle. It breaks us. It makes us miserable. But it's the one thing that we owe our life to. That will be bitter in the beginning, but it will be nectarian in the end, and therefore it is worth not giving every single time. And so we will end with this beautiful verse from the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. If all of you can repeat after me. Etavan Sankhya Yogabhyam Swadharma Parinishthaya Janmalabha Parapumsam Ante Narayana Smriti Ante Narayana Smriti. The highest perfection of human life, achieved either by complete knowledge of matter and spirit, by practice of mystic powers, or by perfect discharge of occupational duty, is to remember the personality of Godhead at the end of life. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Go.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the wonderful class. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much. It was a very wonderful class, very wonderful pastime, Madhav Brahma pastime. So, Prabhu, you made one comment, and I think we heard that again and again often. Mother Draupadi, at her time of distress, the worst distress that a woman can face, and she tried to protect herself, and she asked for the help of the other people that she had around her husband and her elderly people and guru and grandfather and so on. And that is considered somewhat as the lake of surrender. But I would say, why it is like that? It's a very natural response. Somebody attacks you, you will fight it out. Anyone will try to protect yourself. You will ask your friends, relatives, right? So it should not be looked as her lake of surrender. That is kind of funny. On the other hand, we look at from the perspective of our Lord. Like say, if I am kind of if the Supreme Lord, right? If I am watching, if I am watching someone who I love is being disrespected, I would not wait that person until that person calls me. I would go right away. I know that that's my beloved whosoever is, right? My friend or whatever, any relation there. So it doesn't fit to the description of the Lord either. Either way, this explanation neither justifies the nature of a devotee. If right from the beginning I'm in trouble and I start crying for oh Krishna, I mean if Krishna is just I have to call for him, shouldn't I do my part? Right? And then I mean if Krishna doesn't wait for me that oh let my devotee get to the point where I would go and help him. So that isn't, I mean it doesn't justify Krishna's personality either. So this perspective, even though it's so highly glorified, it is my, I mean if you look at from the kind of magnifying glass, it's not a right perspective. I mean I would like to have your kind of when we say Mother Draupadi is not surrender or Krishna was waiting for her to get desperate, either thing, I mean you understood, right?
Yes,
I'm trying
yes.
to make a point. So Prabhu, please have some light on that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Prabhu, for asking that question, and it's actually quite humble of you. You're quite senior. You're asking a tiny person like me. I think there's two ways to look at this according to the purports from Srila Prabhupada and our previous acharyas. It's not like Draupadi wasn't calling for the Lord when she was asking help from these other people. Like her first instinct was to ask help from these people, and even then she was asking for help from the Lord. Even when she was trying to keep hold of her sari, she was still chanting, Hey Govinda, Hey Govinda. But the nature of the Lord is such that He reciprocates to the degree of our surrender. And He was waiting for that moment where He was like, okay, if you're endeavoring by yourself, I'm going to let you do that. But when it comes to a point where you now have no one in this world that can save you, and you have that resolute determination, and it's not like she does not have resolute determination. She's actually a pure devotee of the Lord. I mean, she's the wife of the Pandavas. She's the daughter of. So she's Yajnaseni. She's also arisen herself from the yajna or the sacrificial fire. So she's actually very, very close to the Lord. But I think the illustrious example that she's trying to demonstrate here for conditioned souls is that unless there is a resolute determination that I want nothing but the Lord will not reciprocate to the fullest of His extent. And of course, as we see, when she was pulling the sari, when she was calling out to these people, eventually who was the one giving her the strength to keep hold of her sari or call these people? It was the Supreme Lord who was giving her that intelligence. At the same time, the Lord was demonstrating through her example that when you reach that point of surrender, where you have no one else, then I will immediately arrive. And He does the same thing in the 8th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam with liberation of Gajendra. He waits until Gajendra is trying to do something with his own legs, call his relatives, try to swim out of water. And Gajendra is still calling out for the Lord because he is Maharaj Indradyumna in his past life and he's remembering these prayers. But there comes a point where Gajendra is like, it's been a year since I'm fighting this crocodile and I just can't take it anymore. And that's the moment when he raises that flower garland and he calls out the Lord's name. And the Lord instantly appears for his devotee. And that's something which is hope-giving. That's very hope-giving to us because in his conversation with Kanchipurna, Lord Varadraj promised Kanchipurna that one who has sincerely endeavored to practice Krishna consciousness or spiritual life in their whole life, even if that person is not able to remember me at the time of death, I will force my remembrance to that person. And so that's our hope. Our hope is Srila Prabhupada and his teachings. And therefore, yes. So to answer your question specifically, he was trying to teach all of us that when the resolute determination comes, the Lord will immediately be there for his devotees. He will otherwise also be there, but he reciprocates to the degree of our surrender. I hope that adds some context to.
This pastime may tell us that we should not fight for ourselves. If we take that understanding, fighting for ourselves or asking for help, right? That means should we not try to protect ourselves? I mean, actually, we should do our part and Krishna will do his part. So this is still doesn't kind of answer that. I mean, where is Krishna's unconditional mercy towards his devotee. That part is also there. Because I am fighting for myself, that's why Krishna will let me kill by anybody else. Right? That if I can fight and I just simply depend upon Krishna, then only will protect me. So, and I mean, the other side of the kind of a psychology is that Lord wanted to make a point that because all of them were to be killed in the battle of Mahabharata, right? So he actually made a point that all of them did the kind of sinful activity of their own daughter, the archaic lady being this, they allowed to disrespect her, right? So that was the point. I would say because otherwise the message is like that. We should not fight for ourselves. The moment the trouble comes, we should call out for the Lord. That would be considered as my full surrender. But if I fight for myself, or if I'm asking for, people whom are asking for the help, or people if I'm looking on my own power, that also comes from the Lord. I would rather think, why should I disturb my Lord? Let me try my full. If He wants to save me, He will save me anyhow. Why should I disturb my Lord? All my husbands are here, my guru, my grandfather, father-in-law, they are all there. Lord will inspire them also to save me. So I think the logic, that's also fight. Why should I disturb my Lord, right? That's also another thing that for every bit of my trouble, if I keep calling Lord, that's not a pure bhakti either. So, this pastime always had, I like the other part of the argument better, that Lord actually wanted to prove that they are all now dead. The entire Guru Sabha is now dead because they allowed to watch, illegally in front of them. Right? Grandfather Bhishma and Guru Drona. And at least in our individual life, if I have some trouble, I must die with full vigor, having full faith in the Lord. Ultimately, He is the protector. But I should do my effort. That shouldn't be considered as my lane of surrender.
Certainly. Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that perspective. And just conscious of time, I'll be super quick. But in general, what I've read through the purports in this chapter is the Lord never interferes with someone's free will. So even with Madhav Brahman, He gave 3 signals to him. But at the end, when he decided to indulge, the Lord did not intervene because the one thing that the Lord never intervenes is our free will. And when we take one step, then He takes 100 steps to us, but He wants us to take that one step as an expression of our desire. But thank you, thank you, Prabhu, for that perspective as well.
Thank you, Prabhu. Any final question or? Okay.
Time because they have come right. We still have some time. Children are still outside.
Okay, sure. Sure.
Thank you so much for the wonderful class. I thought maybe we didn't have time for this. But based on what you said about everyone has a kuntala in their life, and sometimes there's so much going on in our lives we're not able to identify what our kuntala is also. So does it happen according to our practice, or when we practice, or at a level of practice of sadhana, we're able to identify our kuntala, or even before that some devotees or some people generally know what it is, but myself sometimes I don't even know what it is because there may be multiple kuntalas we don't even know. So, so that's why my question was, so how do we identify, and at what level do we know for sure that these are our kuntalas or kuntala? Yeah.
Certainly, Prabhu, and that's a very good question. Thank you for asking that. I think, and thank you for being honest. I think many of us, including myself, we sometimes are in situations where so many things are happening that we might not even be aware that we are basically swimming in the middle of kuntalas, and we are just like, oh, this is normal or this is natural. But that's where we have to look from the perspective of Guru, Sadhu and Shastra. And so when we regularly read Srila Prabhupada's books and associate with the devotees and chant the holy name, what ends up happening is, because the Paramatma is also sitting right in the heart and He's seeing our struggle. So when the Paramatma sees that we are sincerely endeavoring and all we really want is conducive, favorable progress in Krishna consciousness, then through some means or the other, whether it's through the spiritual master or through the devotees that we associate with, or even just like Avanti Brahman, he considered several, I think 26 plus gurus. And so through some medium or the other, the Lord will give us an indication that, hey, this is something that's going wrong in your life. But that will only come when we are sincere and when we are seriously endeavoring ourselves. We don't actually have to be perfect in Krishna consciousness. We just have to have the desire to someday be perfect and endeavor to the best of our capacity. And for the Lord, that is basically everything. He doesn't actually expect us to be perfect. He just expects us to endeavor in that direction. And so once someone does that, then the Lord automatically through mystical arrangements will guide the struggling soul. Then the person will be able to see that this is how things have been going, and I think that I could improve these things, or I could remove these things from my life and make my life better. And it's a gradual process. It's a step-by-step gradual process. But at the end of the day, it compounds. So we just have to stay loyal and true to the path, and the guidance will come. All the successful devotees who have gone back to Godhead or accomplished a perfectional stage of life where they are now chanting Shuddha Naam or really relishing the genuine mellows of spiritual life. If we read Acharya's biographies, for example, they present themselves as beings who are completely confused. Like in one of the prayers, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says that I am lowlier than the Asuras, because the Asuras were killed by you, my dear Lord, and they got liberated. But look at me, I am still here in this world. And so if the Acharyas can think like that, us thinking like that is completely natural and normal. That, where am I? I'm not fully sure. But I have faith on your mercy, and I have faith on the mercy of the devotees, and I know that someday, by their mercy alone, I have hope to make back to Godhead. And so the Lord really appreciates that. He reciprocates with that desire. And
Thank you so much.
where prayers become a habit, miracles become a lifestyle. So I think that's something. Thank you for being direct. Thank you, everyone.